when I was able to review the records, I saw the things that she wrote about me and saying that I was being promiscuous by having sex professionally, and I was an escort, and I was gay, and I was leading myself to promiscuous behavior that can cause HIV. And you know, she kept saying things like that, but in a really derogatory fashion and meaner. So it made me look worse than what it actually was. As a gay man, most of us have sex on the first date. That's just the way it is. You know, in fact, that's how most gay men are able to decide who they're going to spend the rest of their life with, because when they have sex on the first date and it's off the charts, they fall in love and they spend, they end up becoming lovers. It's the same thing with lesbians, but lesbians don't have sex. When they first meet each other, they move in, and because their mental states are a whole lot different than males as opposed to females. So they move in right away. Gay men have sex right away. This is the culture. This is the society. This is the community. She didn't understand that. And as I kept reading the notes, I began to see that she was literally copying and pasting things that were in a book. And to me, here I am spilling out my most personal, traumas and experiences in my life, and you clearly did not understand the word that was coming out of my mouth. And you placed judgment on me incorrectly. After seeing those notes, I knew instantly I would not be enlisted into the police academy, which blew my mind too, because I was a military police officer in the canine division, for 10 years in the military. It's the same type of training. Everyone who served this country, when they come home, they all join some type of law enforcement job or work in some type of law field. Either be a lawyer or a security guard or the FBI, or troopers, state troopers, or like me, the NYPD. Those doors should have been wide open for me. But instead, they were locked and chained, and I could not get into the police academy for the life of me. Even after passing the physical and all their tests, I did not get in because of what she wrote. So to me, a therapist is really not helpful at all. Group therapy is not helpful at all, because group therapy, I found myself taking on other people's problems, and it put more pressure on me, and I couldn't take it. And to me, that was not the right environment for me. The key to my happiness, I found, was having a dog. And my dog became my emotional support service dog, because again, I worked in the canine division. I trained my dog a specific way. He acted a specific way. He was in danger of no one. I was not even concerned about his health and well-being, because he knew what to do and where to go and how to do it. Because I trained him that way. I never walked him on a leash. That's how obedient he was. He never left my side for 21 years. So when he was gone, I found myself alone for the first time as an adult man, and it hit me really hard. And I had to call. I don't have any friends, I don't have any family, so I called these crisis hotlines, and every one of them, it was sort of the same thing. And by the time I reached my point, their time was up and I couldn't continue on the conversation, so I had to hang up. That's number one. Number two, I'm constantly repeating the story over and over and over again because it's a different operator. Number three, they ask you ridiculous questions. I remember saying to an operator once, when she asked me, do I see people and do I hear voices? I said to myself, that would possibly be a good idea, because I don't have anybody to talk to. So she was putting that idea in my head by asking that question. No, I didn't see anybody. No, I was not hallucinating. But the very thought of having someone to talk to was possibly a really good idea. So I told her that you put that idea in my head. So if I hear voices and I see people, that's you putting that into my vulnerable state of mind. So that question is really redundant, and it should not even be asked. You know, there are ways to get information from people. And what I realize is that when you call these crisis hotlines, they're not professional people. They're just random people who needed a job. And sometimes I hear babies crying in the background, and other times I hear the fire alarm going off and having to tell the operator that she needs to change the battery in her fire alarm. You know, so I know that I'm calling these random people who don't have any degrees or education within the mental health field. And so they're trained to specifically do things in a certain amount of time, and then you have to hang up. There's another question that I find a lot of issue with is that are you feeling like you having suicidal thoughts? Do you feel like you want to kill yourself? No, I don't, but do you honestly believe that I'm going to tell you that? Because if I say yes, do you know what will happen? They will send a squad car from the NYPD, maybe even 4 or 5 cars, 6 cars, and maybe 15, 16, 17, 20 police officers come banging on my fucking door to come and use force that is not necessary. Why would you, as a mental health professional or why would you put someone who's dealing with a mental health crisis in a situation that is deemed unnecessary and all this force is being used to detain me, someone who's innocent and vulnerable and going through a crisis? That is not the answer. That is not the answer. This is why I keep saying mental health is a severe issue, and people need to be aware of it, and the stigma that goes along with it, especially with the icing on the cake that they're gay. It just makes the whole thing even worse, and the person suffer even more mental health issues. I tried so many times to speak to Oprah or Tamron Hall or Dr. Phil to relay this information to them. But no one listens, no one watches, no one cares, nobody knows me, no one knows the trauma I'm suffering or the pain that I'm going through on a daily basis. My story alone is so compelling, it can be made into a fucking movie. I don't know why it hasn't been made into a movie, because I have decades and decades of history, in journals that I wrote, and pictures from years ago and stories that could be made into a series, because it went on for so many years and continues to go on for so many years, because now that Bill Clinton is gone, I find myself like I was when I was a kid, stuck inside a room with my own thoughts and no one to talk to. And the only person that I interact with is the television. And I love my TV, but TV doesn't talk back to me. And it's become an ongoing battle, and I don't know what to do or where to begin. But I will be right back. Okay, here's a journal. I stopped writing in my journals because my mother found them and she would beat me for the things that I wrote. Or her husband would make me stand with my hands up on one leg for hours and hours and hours while he lay in bed watching me eating ice cream. And then afterwards forcing me to engage in sexual activity with him. I remember bleeding profusely from my, you know, anal cavity. I don't want to be, blunt and say ass, but I was bleeding from my ass. And he said, it's okay. This is what love is. I love you and I want it. And no matter how much I cried and begged and tried to pull myself away and crawl on the bed away from him, he kept forcing himself inside me. And it hurt. And he did this so often that eventually it stopped hurting. And I actually did believe that he loved me because the more that it went on, the more I liked it. And the more I wanted it. So even when he wasn't seeking it, I would find him and suck his cock and do things because I wanted his love and attention because I wasn't receiving it from my mother or anyone else in my family, and no one else, like friends or anything like that. I was stuck inside the house all the time. It was just me and him, and it's the only love and attention I ever got. So it happened over and over and over again. But I'm sorry for going off topic, but this is a journal, one of my journals, and I want to read this to you. October 12th, 1999, Tuesday. I write today in a new book because I have a lot to say. It happened to me again. Yes, you guessed it. Another man has played me. It was the cute Puerto Rican this time. The cute guy that Michael helped me catch. He never returned my calls because he has a lover. Just like Anton did. But I'm glad he didn't wait until we had sex for him to tell me that. But saddened because my birthday is on Friday. And I have nothing to do. No lover. Nowhere to go. Nothing. Do you see how that is? I'm essentially going through the same thing that I have been going through since 1999. Nothing has changed. My life has been a place of isolation and loneliness the entire time. Nothing has changed. I'm going to continue. Usually if we're going to make plans or have plans set, you would have already knew what was going on or what was going to happen. Not me. I wish I was with Tony. There I would know I had plans. What am I going to do? I don't want this weekend to end up like last weekend, with me being home with nothing to do, watching Sister Act 2. Sometimes I wish I had a normal life. Like me going out on the weekend. Like I did that day with the Puerto Rican in the doctor's office. I had so much fun that day, but unfortunately it was the last day I saw him. I just wish every day was like that. I need to jerk off. I'm so horny right now. I need to do this for my birthday. And it ends. I'm going to read this one and then I'm going to cut it. But I wanted to read these notes to you to show proof that I have these stories of what I've gone through in my lifetime as proof. Here is the documentation. Here is the documentation. My story alone can really be made into a movie or a best-selling book on the New York Times bestseller list. These stories, as I read that to you, it makes me realize that nothing has essentially changed. All those doctors and being put into truant detention centers or even being arrested. My mother had me arrested once. My stepfather was beating her profusely and punched her and was kicking her and doing all this stuff to her. He beat me too, but I thought as he did that, he was expressing his love like he was with me. So eventually, after he beat her, perhaps they had sex. I don't know, but he did with me. So I was assuming that was his whole plan and procedure on how he conducted himself. But I come to find out he would beat my mother and hit her because she wouldn't provide him money to get high. And she always gave him money, but she always knew what he was going to do with that money. So she tried to stop it, but yet he continued to do it. And that's one thing I learned. When you continue to support someone's habit, they're going to keep coming to you for help because you're supporting their habit. I don't understand why she never put him into a rehab facility or taken him out the house, because he essentially was in danger of her, in danger of her life and her children's lives. But my stepfather was never removed. He was never removed after molesting me. She caught us. She caught us having sex and still denied it. But on this particular day, they were fighting, and I came out my room, and she told me to go back in my room, and I said, no, I'm tired of this. Now, in the projects, the walls are so thick, you can literally scream for your life and be murdered, and no one will hear you. No one will hear you. And she's screaming at the top of her lungs, and it's echoing through the apartment. And I'm like, oh, why is this happening? Why does this keep happening? This has to stop. So when I came out my room, she tried to push me back into the room, and I said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. So me and my stepfather literally got into a physical fight. We're hitting each other. I punch him in the eye, he punched me in my nose, and we tussled to the floor, and she's trying to separate us. So when she separated us, I was so angry and irate that this was going on that I noticed on the dining room table that there were 2 empty Colt 45 bottles. And I picked one up and I said, come one step closer to her or me, and I'm going to bash this over your fucking head. He told me I was threatening him, and who am I to threaten him? And I was like, well, you're not part of this family. You were brought here. We were born here. There's a difference. Respect us. And he refused to, and he came after me and was running toward me. So as he was running toward me, I threw the bottle. When I threw the bottle, I missed him. I was really sad that I missed him and really upset that I missed him, but it hit the wall, and when it hit the wall, it shattered. And it shattered into several different shards of glass, and they flew everywhere. And from what I was taught and what the police were told, one of the shattered glass, I don't want to mark myself, so I'm not going to do that, but one of the pieces of sharded glass, when it hit the wall, it flew, and it essentially cut my mother's face, left side of her face. And When the police came, she told the story, and I was 15 years old. 15 years old. Protecting her. She didn't have him arrested for hitting her. She had me arrested. That's right. My own mother had me arrested. Again. No one else in the family has ever been involved in any type of, police interaction whatsoever. It was always me. Me, me, me. There are 5 of us. Why was I the only one targeted for this type of abuse and behavior from my mother? I don't understand that to this day. There are still so many questions I have that are unanswered, but I will never know the answer to those questions. This is why I believe my life is the way it is, because there is no closure. There is no learning from the experiences that happened in my past, or learning from the experiences of what made me the person I am today. Because as children, people don't value teachers as they should, or give credit to teachers as they really should, because teachers are the ones responsible for shaping the life of their students. They're the ones who deserve the credit in shaping the lives of their students and the success of their students. And it's the same with parents. When we're children, we absorb everything like sponges. And same thing with dogs. They absorb everything like sponges. And if they're not taught a certain way, they're going to behave a certain way. So every time I did something, I was always being reprimanded or punished or sent to my room or being beaten or starved because of me sticking up for myself, or me talking back to someone, or me defending my mother. The police officer even shook his head like, "Ma'am, are you sure you want to do this? This is your son. He was only protecting you." And she followed through with it and signed a complaint, and I was sent to jail. 15 years old. They put me on Rikers Island. Rikers Island at 15 years old. Now that tells me how corrupt the NYPD system is, and how it has been for years. There is, to me, you shouldn't defund the police, because we need the police, but they need to be retrained. No way on this planet Earth should a 15-year-old boy be sent to Rikers Island. I was not being charged as an adult. I was just simply protecting my mother, and hope I was begging that I would be released to my own recognizance. But they sent me, a teenager, again, that I was not being charged as an adult, for battery to Rikers Island. Assault and battery, and I was being sent to Rikers Island. And I stayed in Rikers Island for 2 weeks. But not only did I miss school, which I found conflicting as well, because here you are calling a truant officer when I didn't go to school, but now that I started to go back to school, you had me arrested, so I couldn't go to school. So that was conflicting to me as well, and I missed school for about a month because of this incident. And I spent 2 weeks in Rikers Island. I didn't get any sleep because I was essentially fresh meat with all the adults that were in the same, I don't want to say squad, or, bunker, or, what do you call it? The same area that they are, They were rapists and murderers and gun shooting criminals and robbery suspects and people who did felony charges that were put against them and who committed felony crimes. And here I am, a young boy, stuck in the middle of this. And I was scared for my life because people kept harassing me. And I feared that I was going to be raped. And I mean, looking back at it now, the police were definitely in the wrong. My mother was in the wrong. But people were constantly coming up to me and harassing me and trying to touch me and pull me somewhere hidden so they can possibly molest me and fondle me and rape me. And a security guard who looked like Mary J. Blige, and Mary J. Blige at the time had just come out with her first album, What's the 411. So she looked like Mary J. Blige, and I told her that, and she saw what was happening. So essentially, she was my security guard for 24 hours. 24 hours a day. She was watching me. This woman she didn't go home or anything like that. She stood there watching me because every single second, every single minute, every single hour, somebody was harassing me and trying to attack me. Because again, I had no rightful place to be there. I was not supposed to be there. And finally, when I actually got my court date 2 weeks later and the judge found out that I was in Rikers Island, they dismissed the case immediately because they didn't want a lawsuit on their hands. I tried to seek, legal assistance, but it was just me as a child, and they could not represent me as a child. I needed an adult supervision to even bring a case to a lawyer, so it was never addressed. So I came back again to a dysfunctional environment. But this time I was like, I'm not going to let her do this to me anymore. I'm not going to let him, my stepfather, do this to me anymore. I'm going to do my best to get out of here. My older brother had moved out. My eldest brother had married and moved out. So now, for the first time, it was just me and my younger brother living there, and my sister, and there was more space, and my younger brother actually had friends in the neighborhood, and I didn't. So I was stuck in the room, essentially, all by myself, every single day. And I would go to school because school was the only sanctuary I had. I felt like I was Harry Potter, where all of the positive things that, that he had experienced in his lifetime were at school, aside from Voldemort trying to kill him. But all of the people who respected him and understood what his life was like and welcomed him and accepted him was at school. And Harry Potter himself didn't want to go back home to where his uncle lived because he knew that was not the right place for him to be in. He needed to be in school. And I wanted to be in school because, one, I didn't want to get arrested and sent back to another group home or a truant detention center or even jail. So I just kept going to school, and I told you that's where I met Anne and Paul, and we became friends, and it was because of them that I went to school, and I loved seeing them every day, and they helped me graduate, and I was the first one in my family to graduate. So when I graduated with honors, and I was very proud of myself, considering the fact that I was so scared to go to school, and then they put me in it's so hard because it's so much. When they put me in special ed for not going to school, because that's what public schools did at the time. I don't know if they still do it, but people who didn't go to school, they automatically put them in special ed. I didn't belong in special ed because I didn't have any abnormalities, or a mental disability or anything like that. I didn't want to go to school because I was fearing my life, I was constantly being beat up and harassed for the color of my skin and because I was effeminate and gay. And it was not the right place for me to be in. And when I met Ann and Paul, they 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 accepted me, and they made me want to go to school just to see them, you know. And they were my best friends, and I thought they would be my best friends for life, but that's not the case. But when I graduated with honors, and I had two diplomas. I had a high school diploma and I had a Regents diploma. Now they're combined as one. Now they're combined as one. So at the time, I had two. And I remember one night I was in my room and I was studying for the Regents exam. And I was sitting maybe the same distance I am from the camera. But it was a TV. And I'm sitting in a chair writing down, the answers to the questions and studying for the Regents. So I was like this. And I heard like shattered glass. And I look around and I don't see any glass that's broken, So I go to the window and I see drug dealers shooting guns in the air. It was not New Year's, it was not Christmas, it was not the 4th of July. There was nothing to be celebrated about. Because that's what happens in the ghetto. Whenever there's something to be celebrated, someone shoots. So I thought it was very strange. And when I looked and saw that, they saw me and continued to fire. So I pushed the curtain back and I went back down and I sat down in my chair until the gunfire stopped. When the gunfire stopped, that's when I actually saw the glass from the window broken. And I called 911 on my cell phone because I was cell phone. It was one of the first times like cell phones were introduced, and I was one of the first people to actually have a cell phone, and it was with T-Mobile. They were called Voice Stream at the time, and it was prepaid, and the service sucked, but it was a cell phone, and that goes to show you how many years things in my life actually go on. Like, to this day, I'm still a T-Mobile customer, so I was a T-Mobile when they first started, when they weren't even T-Mobile, So I call 911, and the police come, and as they're searching the room, and they're using lasers and stuff like that to find out where the bullets were coming from, they put the laser, and the laser from the window went into the wall. And sure enough, when they looked from the laser pointer to where it was pointing on the wall, the bullet was lodged into the wall. It was a half an inch to an inch at most from my head. I could have been shot in the head if I looked up. But my head was down because I was studying. So had I looked up, I probably would have been shot in the head. Now my mother comes in and sees the bullet, and the police officer tells her, your son is really lucky. He could have died. She had the gall and the audacity to say, well, it just wasn't his time. The police officer and I looked at each other, and our mouths just dropped. Like, Mom, how could you say something like that? It just wasn't your time to go. Get over it. And she left, without even listening to the full report of what actually happened. It would be years later that I found out that my mother put a hit on me. So she paid the drug dealers to shoot directly into my window to kill me because my mother didn't want me. Now, if that is not a compelling story enough, I don't know what is. That's why I said I don't understand why Tamron Hall, Dr. Phil, Oprah, no one has reached out to me to listen to my story. Not even the public. No one is even watching this video. I'm talking because I need to talk and I need to get this out. Because this will be my legacy. This will be my truth. And hopefully when I'm dead, someone will find this video and see the trauma that I've experienced throughout my entire life. Because it just goes on and on. Those are just a few stories. I have a whole lot more, but I can't keep going on with one video. So I'm going to cut it there. I wish and I pray that Netflix or somebody pick up the rights of my story, because I'm willing to negotiate my rights of my story to be published as a book or a movie or a series, because I really think it would be huge. And especially as a gay man, living as a gay man in the military when it wasn't accepted, living as a gay man before gay marriage, living as a gay man in the ghetto, living as a white boy in the ghetto. There's so many stories that I have that involve neglect and abuse and torture and starvation and loneliness and desperation and isolation. I don't know why it's not picked up. But hopefully, as I continue to make more of these videos on my show GayTopix, I'm going to continue to be more personal. And you'll get to know more of my horrific life. And I hope that you stay tuned and possibly watch this. But I doubt it, because no one watched my other videos. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for listening. Bye.